Hi, I'm Magda Miśka-Jackowska, and this is my film music podcast, Score in the City. I usually run it in Polish, but every now and then I would like to air interviews in English for those of you who would prefer the original version. So enjoy and feel free to share it. And here is my special guest for this week, an American film composer, Oscar-nominated for his short documentary. His most famous scores include those for Green Book, King Richard, Bridgerton. Wonderful. Kris Bowers. Most recently, he wrote music for Netflix's Queen Charlotte, A Bridgerton Story, which is what we're going to talk about today. How did you react when you heard about the spin-off of Bridgerton, Queen Charlotte, for the first time? On one hand, something completely new, but on the other hand, something very familiar.
Yeah, I was really excited about it. I think for me, I've just been really fascinated by her story in real life, not only her marriage to George, but also the theories that she might have been, a descendant of African descent. And so for me, it was really exciting to see how they might kind of bring that story to life. And then I also was just excited to see how we could have a story be a bit different from Bridgerton. I know when I first heard from Shonda and Alex Patsavas and Betsy and Scott and Tom about them doing this, they immediately told me that this is going to feel tonally very different from Bridgerton, or there's going to be an effort made to make this feel tonally different from Bridgerton. So I was really excited about exploring a world that felt similar to Bridgerton, but had some sort of difference to it. For them, it was about it being a bit more grounded, a little less kind of like opulent and flowery and all of that. And I think even just in terms of the cinematography and the production design and the way that it looks a little bit different. So they wanted the music to reflect that. They wanted the music to also have a bit of a tonal seriousness to it and not be as, I think with Bridgerton, we have a lot of fun at times. And I think this story definitely has a lot more weight to it.
You already said that that Queen Charlotte was a real person. So was that important for you while preparing this project, making this music?
Yeah, it really was. One of the first things that Alex Patsavas and I spoke about was how we could possibly look to Black composers from that time period as references. And so Chevalier, Joseph Bologna, Chevalier de St. George became a really big reference for me. And also just thinking a bit more about, that time period. And I decided to use a pianoforte for all the piano in her younger sections to have it feel, one, just tonally a bit different, but also the piano itself wasn't a mainstream instrument at the time. And so I thought it'd be more interesting to have an instrument that felt like it was more connected to that time period. So there were a few things that were really influenced by the fact that she was a real person.
There are a lot of strings, different techniques. I heard a lot of pizzicato. How's it for you to work with strings?
Yeah, I love it. I've been falling more and more in love with it. I'm a piano player and it's been amazing to just find more and more things that are possible on the instrument. I think that like my first instances writing for strings was being really careful not to, subject them to my pianistic mentality and kind of keep things that I knew from my studying were going to be easy for them to play. But the more string players I've worked with intimately, the more I've realized like, oh, you guys can actually do way more than I imagined. And also, with this series in particular, it was fun to really lean into like the percussive side of string playing. And so, yeah, I just feel really thankful for the musicians that I have on the score that one, I can ask them what's possible or throw things at them that might not be possible and have them help me figure out how to make it possible. And also, they've really put me on to a lot of different string writing that I wasn't aware of before, to kind of help me with my palette and my approach.
Strings are, in my opinion, very intimate because you even keep the instrument, more close to yourself. How many people was there in this team in the orchestra?
Yeah, so as far as strings go, it's usually only 5 players, but they're layering themselves. So even when you hear, like, I think about the first cue with Charlotte and it's her theme, there's only one cellist playing all of those cello parts, but there's, I think, like 4 or 5 different solo cello parts that are kind of layered on top of each other. So it was really like using this string quintet as, sometimes a proper quintet, sometimes more of like an octet, sometimes it's a full orchestra, but it's, for the most part, 5 players or a couple of additional players kind of help with how many layers we had. So I'd say the most, probably around 10 to 12 players.
Let's talk about the bridges a little bit. The bridges between Bridgerton and the Queen Charlotte. Tell me a little bit about that. Is it possible to build some upon this, this energy? Yeah,
definitely. So, for me, one of the biggest things that I decided to do was to have all of the young Charlotte moments be a more intimate sound. So it's a smaller ensemble. The strings are recorded with more close mics. It's less of a big room sound and more of like an intimate, being able to hear that fingering and all of that. And then for the present day Charlotte, or the Charlotte that we know from Bridgerton, it's a fuller sound and it sounds a bit closer to the score for Bridgerton. So I wanted to, when we go into those moments, have it feel a little bit more familiar. And then the other thing is, there are a couple of very, very hidden moments where I do reference the Lady Whistledown theme from Bridgerton. And I'm pretty sure that's the only theme that survives from Bridgerton that is actually in this series. But there's a moment in episode 1 and a couple of other times later where, we actually see a Lady Whistledown pamphlet and her theme is heard very quickly in those moments. And then I can't take credit for this, but Alex Patsavas choosing covers, I feel like, is something else that still is very strong in this series. And I guess lastly, too, just there are moments where the score even leans into more of a contemporary sound in a similar way that to Bridgerton.
I had this feeling many times that on one hand, I feel like I'm surrounded by these musicians and as they were real from the movie. And then a minute later, I had this feeling, okay, but this is very modern. So you tell the story musically using like our modern today emotions. And this is a very, very good combination, very unique.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, definitely. It's something that, has been a concept from season 1, just like you were just saying, wanting to have people watching it feel like they could relate their own emotions. And I think that sometimes any period TV show that has music that feels very, very appropriate to the period, while it's, especially as a musician, really amazing to hear and watch it as an audience member, can sometimes have us be a bit removed from that experience. And I think that it's really nice in these shows to be able to lean into something that can help the, everyday person today that's watching this show feel like they can empathize with these characters because the music feels more relatable.
Can you tell me a little bit about catching the spirit of the movie? Each time you work on a movie or series, you have to catch the spirit and present it to the audience. How do you work with that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that it's really, that's like that, sometimes indescribable part that's so unique to each composer. Because I think for me, it's really a process of watching it and seeing, literally, like you were saying, catching the spirit from what I'm watching. And so much of what I'm writing is really just my emotional and mental response to what I'm seeing. I feel like I'm much more eloquent and articulate through music than I am verbally. And so, if I were to watch this show and tell you verbally how it made me feel, it'd be a little difficult to capture that specific emotion, but telling you how I feel about it musically is very easy for me and fluent for me. And so that's really the process, is just like watching these actors and these stories play out and really thinking about how it makes me feel and trying to write music that makes me feel the same way that I felt watching it, And so it's really just the honor and privilege of working on something that has such clear emotion that's being told through the storytelling and the acting and the way it's directed and all of that.
What makes it even more difficult is that you cannot teach this. You cannot, you cannot just get it from school. It's very hard to explain what it means to catch the spirit of the movie. Do you remember any specific advice that you got from, I don't know, a teacher, mentor that worked very well for you?
Yeah, I think that a couple of things. One, to study craft as much as possible and to really like perfect craft. And I say that broadly because, craft might mean craft is really dependent on whatever it is that you want to express. And so for me, wanting to know how to orchestrate and learning the craft of orchestration was really important for me, but that's because I wanted to write music for the orchestra. Or like, the more I got into writing music, the more I wanted to work on the craft of production because I liked things that were produced very specifically in terms of the sound you're getting and all of that. And so really learning as much as you can about the craft. And then, like you were just saying, you can't teach these things. And so therefore it's important to remember that these things come from within. Like you can have teachers that can help direct you in the direction that you would like to go. But it's really nice to remember, especially with film scoring, that like anybody can do it. It's really just a matter of like learning how to express the things in your own mind and your imagination to the best of your ability. But what makes us each unique is the way that somebody else would watch Queen Charlotte and write totally different music than I do because of how they're reacting to it and the type of sound that they want to create. And so that can't be taught because everybody's an individual, but what can be taught is the craft and techniques that can help you articulate yourself musically to the best of your ability.
But that's why film scoring is such a, mysterious profession, because of this. I'm super happy that you mentioned craft. One of the greatest Polish film music composers, Wojciech Kilar, known for Dracula by Coppola, loved the craft. The craft was everything to him. But also, many times he wanted to stop composing music for movies. And each time he thought about this, there was a proposition of period movie, costume movie. Is that tempting for you as well to work with costumes?
Yeah, it definitely is, just because it presents such a different world to be able to write for. I think that like, for me, the reason why I also love film scoring is because of how many types of stories and like, time periods and worlds that are created. And so, I would only be thinking about stopping if I were stuck writing the same kind of music for the same types of projects, and so being fortunate to be able to write for so many different types of worlds and create so many different types of music, just always presents a different challenge, and so like you're saying with that composer just being obsessed with craft, I feel like for me, each project is a chance to deepen my craft and like learn something very specific. And so that always keeps it fresh and exciting for sure.
I'm very curious about your passion for Bernard Herrmann's music. Can I ask you why him? Because also for me, he's one of the greatest.
Yeah, I think that like, it's the fact that like the way he uses theme, I think is something that's really huge for me. I feel like it's so clear and the emotion that you get from specific melodies and harmonic gestures, I feel like is so clear. But even the way he reuses themes throughout a movie, when you listen to like a score like Vertigo and hearing themes reprise, but feel slightly different just based on like the orchestration or based on like, different subtle changes that he's making. And I also feel like there was that particular time that he existed in where music was such a huge part of the storytelling. And, I think him and John Williams have always been huge favorites of mine, primarily because they wrote music for directors that wanted music to really be this huge, character really in the movies. And I feel like they took full advantage of that and wrote music that we all remember because they were given the space to do that. So yeah, I think he just was a master at orchestration, a master at themes, and then a master at telling the story with music that's very big and lush and present, but at the same time, not crossing the line of making it feel like it's overdoing it. And that's such a delicate balance.
This is a beautiful, rich history from Bernard Herrmann, from the first scores in Hollywood till now, to today, Queen Charlotte, and many, many movies and TV series we watch and we listen to. Do you think that the film scoring is still changing somehow, or looking for new ways or possibilities, or everything was already said and now we can, just play with it?
No, I definitely new stuff all the time. And that's what excites me too. I mean, I think right now what's happening that's exciting is how many people that are not from that traditional space that are coming into film scoring. Like, my favorite composers right now are often those people. Like I think about Mika Levy, who scored, Jackie and Under the Skin, and also Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead, and like his scores for Phantom Thread and The Power of the Dog. I feel like Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, them coming from Nine Inch Nails to the scores that they're writing. And I feel like Hollywood has really figured out how to take these people that create amazing music and help them orient themselves or organize themselves to be able to write music for a film, and the processes that it takes to do that. And I feel like because of that, we thankfully are getting really refreshing music. Also Labyrinth, who did the score for Euphoria, is another person. Like, I'm excited to see more and more people that come from the record production or like songwriting space that have something to say very strongly through music be given the space to write music for movies and shows. My last question is about inspiration. Is there anything apart from the music that inspires you? Yeah, I mean, you just in general, like in life. Yeah, I think really living life is just such, as artists, I think is the biggest inspiration. I mean, watching Queen Charlotte, I feel like so much of that process of reacting to or catching the spirit, as you said, of what I'm working on is also reflecting my own life, like thinking about like my relationship with my wife. And, obviously we don't have the same issues that they were having, but more so thinking about like how complex it is when two people are trying to navigate their own psyches and their own issues and all of that kind of stuff. And then trying to also navigate the other person's difficulties and how to still make that work as a partnership is something that, I constantly am, thinking about in my own relationship and life. And I feel like that's always inspiring my work. And just spending time with my family, like we have a daughter, and, that's always an amazing piece of inspiration to kind of write from. And then we spend a lot of time outside. I feel like nature is a huge thing for me. And then visual art and other visual mediums, I feel like is something that's really inspiring for me. Like I'm always looking at, I follow a lot of accounts online that are just photographers or like, just screenshots from different movies. Like I just really love visuals, give me such clear feeling that just looking at whether it's painting or photography, or I'm getting it more into photography, those things I feel like are things that are big inspiration for me in writing music. Thank you so much, Kris. One more thing, big hello from Alexander Dembic, the winner of Spire Contest, my dear friend. Yeah, I talked to him this afternoon. He said, "Oh, please say hello from me to Kris," because it was so difficult to meet him as well. Yeah, and like for me, I really listened to all of those blindly. Like I didn't do any research on anybody before listening to the music, just so I didn't have anything influence that. Just wanted to react to what I was moved by the most musically, and he was really amazing. And it was cool to, after I chose him as the winner, to then do more research on how amazing of a musician he is and composer and all of that. So yeah, I was really excited to meet him and have him do that.